Good morning. My name is Jenny Lesser. I'm the Business Development Manager here at United Training. Welcome to today's webinar titled Positive Assertiveness by Matt Rush. We are using the GoToWebinar platform for today's webinar. We are recording this session and we will share a copy of the recording with you. Please feel free to participate through the questions panel. And United Training is excited to present this webinar today. We encourage you to visit unitedtraining.com to find additional professional development practice courses. And I will now hand it over to you, Matt.
Well, thank you very much, Jenny, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Obviously, this is just a segment out of a much longer course, but we're excited you're here. I'm excited to be a part of this, and we're going to try to give you some nuggets of leadership and some nuggets that you can take away and actually apply in your everyday life. So even if you only come through this hour-long class, there's still going to be some stuff that you're going to be able to use and implement to be a more positively assertive person, which is epically cool. I also on the other line is Damian Randisi, who works with United as well. He and I kind of co-team teach these webinars. So Damian, welcome. Good morning. Good day to you, sir.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you for having me. I look forward to learning on how to be more positive assertiveness.
Yeah, because you need to be a little more positive in your assertiveness there, buddy. I'm just kidding.
Just for everyone joining, Matt, before we start, I am monitoring the questions, so please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and if you would like, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, and if you have anything you'd like to share. Thanks, Matt.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm also going to turn the camera off just because it takes up a lot of screen space for you, and then we'll turn it back on at the end. So you'll just have the slides as we go through this content. But seriously, if there's anything you want to add, interrupt, and say or contribute, please feel free to do that, because that makes it more interactive for all of us, and you don't have to listen to Damian now the whole time. So let's get started. One of the things that I absolutely love about this class is how usable it is. And I don't really care what you do or where you're at in your career or your life. This class is just, this concept is just something that really does apply to every person. You may be a very outgoing personality and really, like to be out in front. And you're still going to be able to find some things in this that make you a more positive, assertive person. You may also be a really reserved person, and this is going to give you some nuggets and some tools to put in your toolbox to help you come out of your shell a little bit. So it really applies to everyone. The objectives that we go through when we teach this whole class are as you see. For the sake of time and for our hour together, we're really just going to cover a few things. We're going to cover how can you be more empathetic, and how can you be an empathetic listener? How can you have more confidence and be more outgoing when it comes to your dealings with people? And then really, and lastly, with the third thing that we will cover, or the third topic that we're going to discuss throughout the day, is how do you control the way you say things? Because we all know it's not just what you have to say, it's how you say it. And that has probably more impact on how a message is received than the actual physical words you use. So those are three things that we're going to for sure get, plus a few other things. But as you can see, these are the objectives that we would cover through the full day, and this is and then that's what we're going to talk about this morning. For me, this class, when you're talking about positive assertiveness, like, I don't even know what imagery that brings up in your mind or who that comes to mind. I'm sure there's lots of different pictures that pop in when we talk about positive assertiveness. And it's almost like, hey, how can you be happy while shoving something down somebody's throat, is what that almost sounds like to me. But really, it is all about positive assertiveness. Comes down to, how do you communicate with other people? And that's what makes this class so applicable to all of us. It all comes down to how we communicate a message. Because what's more important, having a message or having the message heard? Obviously, it's having the message heard. So here are a few dimensions of communication that we know exist. The first one is, what's the reason why the person is communicating with you? Like that's an applicable thing. What can the length of the message tell me about the importance of this? Is the message being made formally, or is it like with aloofness or some kind of slang? That's going to be able to judge the level of communication. The volume and the pace. What clues do the loudness and the speed of a message give you? The pauses and the hesitations. How do these enhance or detract from your message? And that's a favorite one of mine. Those last two, the volume and pace, and the pause and the hesitations, those are my favorite two things to use while we are presenting, because they have such power in just those two little things that you can control to dramatically improve your ability to positively assert yourself into a communication setting. And then lastly is the nonverbals. And we're not going to get into the nonverbals today, but those are a huge aspect of positive assertiveness. So let's dive right in, because we got a lot to cover, even within the three things that we're going to talk about today. So the first one is, what's the first thing you could do to be more assertive, to be more positively assertive? And it's all about, how do you ask questions? Your ability to ask questions is paramount to you becoming a better facilitator, a better communicator. This is such a big deal that there are books on how to ask questions. John Maxwell wrote a book. I encourage you to get it. It's called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And in that book, he actually outlines the questions that he himself uses when he is talking to someone. And this is not just a casual conversation. He has, once a month, he schedules a time with someone that he wants to talk to, and he has a list of questions that he has that then he asks, and he can find out certain things about that. But for us, even if it is in a casual conversation or a casual setting, there are really only three types of questions. There's the open questions, clarifying questions, and closed questions. So I actually want you to write these things down. You'll get them in the backside as well, but write these things down about the number one thing you can do to be a more positively assertive person is ask questions. So let's go through them. The first one, open-ended questions. Obviously, open questions stimulate your thinking about discussions or responses, including opinions and feelings. But the cool thing about open-ended questions is they actually give the control away. They give the control back to whomever you are talking to. And I'll talk about this and give you some examples at the end. But these open-ended questions are the whys and the whats. Like, what do you know about the current employee orientation process? Or how do you open the emergency exit door on an A320 aircraft? There are questions that allow the other person to expand. So I'll ask the question even as we get started, and feel free. And Damien, I'll ask you first, and for the rest of you on there, maybe give us an example. Damien, what would you consider an example of an open-ended question, something that you have experienced, and what was its impact on the conversation?
That's a really good question, Matt. I think the one that I always give to clients, and I'm going to specifically for my learning services piece, is what is your culture there, right? And that is an open-ended question that just opens up so many doors for me to listen, to understand, and then to be able to respond with that information and understand what their needs are and how they're doing, and how their processes, what their ethics, their morals, their values, their vision is. When you just ask, what is the culture in your company? And to me, that is a fantastic open-ended question that I use every time that I speak to a client to get a better understanding of who they are, what's important to them, and how they go about achieving that. And for me, that's always question number one, in regards to understanding people, and what I can do to assist them.
Hey, so let me ask you this. Do you ever have people, when you ask that question, and that's a phenomenal question, do you ever have people like, does it catch people off guard that you would ask that question? Because I've never even heard that question before.
Well, hey Matt, what is your culture? No, it's fantastic, because the people who really care about their work, and how they're working within their group will have answers to that pretty quickly. And sometimes you get people who just, like you said, have never heard that question before, and they take some time to think about it. And you can go back to your missions and your value statements and good things else of that nature, and you can get people who give you just what the mission is of the company or what my core values are. And you can still learn from that. But the people who, take time to understand what they're doing and how they're doing, they give a very detailed answer. And you can take that question and just move it in probably 15 different directions, write down answers, and it's more of a discovery of who I'm talking to. And not just from from a work perspective. It's a fantastic way to, I don't ask my friends, hey, what's your culture? That's pretty good. But I think if you get questions that similarly ask that question, you really learn. It's something that I know we talked about on our last webinar. It's something that I try to instill in my 14-year-old, in order to understand people and build that bond.
Oh, I like it. What about the rest of you? Does anyone else on the webinar today have a suggestion of a great open-ended question like that one that you use? Feel free to type it in the chat box. We'd love to hear that. Example of an open-ended question.
So Matt, what is one, while we're waiting for anyone to chat, what is one that you use? I mean, you're out there speaking every day and getting to know all these new companies. What's the first one when you're engaging in a conversation and wanting to display your communication style and who you are and what you do? What's the question that either you get asked or that you ask first?
Well, that's a great question as well, sir. Well,
that's an open-ended question, by the way.
It was a very good open-ended question. Thank you for that example. The one thing that I have started asking, and this has been probably one of the greatest things that I could have done for my speaking career, because for those of you on the webinar, this is what I do. I speak and train. I do keynotes at conferences or banquets, after dinner speaker, or we'll do these leadership type training classes like this one, where we'll do an hour, a half day, a full day, multi-day training event. The question that I have started asking from the beginning is, especially if we're just in the discovery phase, is I ask what type of event are you going to have, which that's the next question. That's more of a clarification question or a close-ended question. They can tell me what their event is, but then I'm like, okay, what do you see the biggest need that I need to fulfill for you? And maybe that goes into almost like a little bit like your culture question is. When I say, if I'm coming in to do a speech and I say, what's the need, then it allows me to know, and it allows them to share with me like what's going on with them. Like what's the good, the bad, the ugly? What's the takeaway that you want your audience to have once I'm gone?
Yeah, and that's great, because Greg did put in the chat, I think, is basically what you're saying here is, what is the driving force for the training that you're interested in? So it sounds like Greg goes ahead and is selling training content, and his question sounds a lot like yours, which is, what is the driving force behind this need?
Yeah, right? Perfect. And it really does allow for me, the big part about this one, and we could do an entire webinar just on this. If we didn't move forward at all, I would be satisfied, because if you can master this thing right here, it will change everything. Because it throws the conversation back onto the other person. And what ultimately does every person just want? Every person on planet Earth just wants to be heard. So if we're talking about whether it's in sales, whether it's in I don't care, run the gamut of what it is, every person wants to be heard, and my job is to make the meeting planner who's bringing me in, they're putting their reputation on the line, because I'm going to come in, I'm going to do a speech, I'm going to do a training, then I'm going to leave. They have to stay there. So my goal and objective is to make them look good. I have even taken it that far where I have said that, okay, the meeting planner, as soon as I say that exact same thing, and the meeting planner is like, well, you got that right. And I'm like, okay, so how could I make you look good? What do
Yeah.
I need to do to make you look good and to make your event a success?
Yeah, we've got some good ones in the chat as well. And I think Justin says, what is the definition of success in your eyes? Which I think, from a business perspective, really opens up a great amount of conversation and an understanding of why they're having this, why they're coming to you, or why we're having that conversation. And it looks like Spirit said, if you could do one thing to increase performance, what is it? I mean, all great understanding questions that make you and help you understand your client or customer or friend or whatever you're looking for in order to either find a solution, help them, or just be a better listener, right? Which we'll get to how that makes you more positive, how it makes you more assertive.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. Well, so let's jump to the next two, and feel free to type suggestions in the chat as well on the next ones. The next type of question is a clarifying question. This is just the thing that clears everything up. It is what it says it is. It removes ambiguity. It asks for more detail. It's almost one of those things where you can kind of help guide an answer, but find out more information and more details while you're doing that. The thing about it, the clarifying question that's hard for some of us who might be a little more out there, as I am, you need to withhold your judgment and your own opinions in this. You ask the question, but then hush your mouth. Don't try to steal the conversation back by giving your judgment or your own opinions yet. Let them talk. And when you're asking for clarifications, you have to listen. My grandma, God rest her soul, she was brilliant. She said, don't ever forget, son, you've got 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. So it's like, do more listening and watching than you do talking. So frame your question as someone trying to understand in more detail. Ask for a specific example is a useful way to do that. And this also helps the speaker evaluate his or her own opinions and perspectives. The clarifying question takes it from the open-ended question. Now we can start drilling down a little bit deeper. So do you have one of those that is for the rest of you, if you've got a great clarifying question, that type that in? And Damien, what's yours when you're that would lead after your culture question?
Matt, and this is a silly one, but I actually, for the most part, I take the last 3 or 4 words in a sentence and I ask that again. So
Right.
if someone says, I went to the park with the dog yesterday and I had a great time. I said, oh, you had a great time? And then, it's really interesting because it works when you're not paying attention and it works when you are paying attention.
It's so true.
That's something that I do all the time, and my daughter has noticed it too. That I repeat the last 3 or 4 and just do it with a little higher pitch at the end. And that's a clarifying question, right? And it works fantastically because it shows you that I'm listening, and that I want to understand more. But it doesn't really get into anything heavy or involved. To me, it just works perfectly.
It does. I do that all the time. My wife catches me doing that to her, and she's like, "Stop that!" And I'm like, "Hey, babe, it's just natural, right? It becomes second nature." But it is a way that you can give control to the other person, allow them to keep talking, and really just drill down a little bit deeper. So I'm the same way. I love doing that because it's easy, and it throws the ball right back into their court and allows you to actually maybe even possibly peel off the next layer. I mean, your example is obviously something that's nothing major, but if someone brings you something in an office or in a workplace, or you're asking a question about, what would make your event a success, then you can say, okay, what are the the specifics in that. If they give you just a 1 or 2 sentence answer, you can say, okay, tell me more about that. I mean, that's one of the other things I always use when we're in a conference call with a client. Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, and that's what we've actually received from Wayne and from let me see here, Wayne and Stacy. I mean, it's the tell me more about that, which I think is the classic one, right?
Thank you all very much for validating. I appreciate that. So a clarifying question. The thing about this that is my caution to everyone is don't become obnoxious with this. If you're not watching your tone, if you're coming at this if you're not watching the intent of where you're coming from, that you're asking this to find out more information, it can come across even as condescending or just annoying, right? I mean, does that make sense, Damien?
It does, and actually, John, and it says that his wife says that means he might be going senile if you just repeat what she says. So yeah,
John, it's a shorter trip for some of us than others. That's
that's
all
right.
I got to say to that.
You can choose when it's, this might be why I don't have a wife, because I do, just repeat the last 3 or 4 words, right? So
We're going to leave that one alone and move to the next. The next type of question is the third one is the close-ended question, and this is typically the one-word answer. It's the yes, the no. You're actually either attempting to shut off discussion or you just need an answer about something. There's nothing wrong with this, but it's the whole it's that thing, like it's that one-word answer. Which font do you want me to use for this report? I mean, it's nothing that's can be crazy complicated. It doesn't have to be rude. It's just, hey, it's the closed-ended question. Do you have any examples of closed-ended questions that people would use?
no.
Brilliant, sir. Brilliant.
I appreciate it. I think this is the one where you just, I think everyone is good with closed-ended questions, and when to use them, I think, is the important part, right? Where you're trying to understand who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what you're trying to get at. Closed-ended questions, usually in my my line of business, the closed-ended question is, do you have a budget? Because you know what that answer always is. It's no.
That's right.
So,
Absolutely. For me, and you're right, everyone gets this part. What I want to close this section off with about how do we be more positively assertive by asking questions. I want to close it out with this. I want you to all stop saying the words how and when, and I want you to start saying what and why. If we're trying to connect to people, which that's what this is all about, positive assertiveness is building connections with people, communicating in a way that connects with people. Stop saying how and when and start saying what and why. And here's what I'm talking about. If someone brings you say one of your team members comes to you and says, this is what we need to do next. And if you say, well, how are you going to do that? Or when are you going to get that done? What does that say to the person? I mean, it almost throws them into an instant defensive mode where they have to answer that like on the spot. And if you change it around and someone says, okay, this is the next thing we need to do, and if you say, okay, what's the reasoning behind that? Or if you say, okay, why do you think we need to do that? Do you see how that changes the dynamics of the way the conversation could go?
absolutely.
And for me, it allows you to let them keep talking simply by saying what and why. Why do we need to do that? What's the reasoning behind that? Allows them to keep talking, but it allows them to drill down to the next layer. So if we're trying to be positively assertive, that's just a simple little way that I've found that really works well in giving control of a conversation back to somebody while opening up a potential bigger picture. And you may be able to discover more that needs to be done or could be done, or maybe it's some reasoning behind it all. Does that make sense, Damien?
It does. It does. It makes perfect sense. And Ernie was nice enough to put in the chat box there, or the question box, on how to improve my skills with, have you budgeted for the solution, or do you need to build a business case and find funds? Which is a lot better question than what I asked Ernie. So thank you.
Ernie, well played, sir. Well played. We take critique as well. So that's a great one right there. So
Absolutely.
that's step number one. And how do we build a positive assertiveness? Ask questions. And these are three types of questions you can ask that's going to actually give power away. And by giving power away, quote, in the conversation, you in turn are becoming the assertive one in the conversation. And that
It's
may
very,
sound kind of odd, but it's just the reality, isn't it?
yeah, I was going to say it's counterintuitive, right? You don't think that, but it really works.
It's the number one thing that you could do that would make a huge difference in your assertiveness. The second step that we really wanted to dive into, and even when we were prepping yesterday for this webinar, Damien said that he goes, "Oh, it's your favorite," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it is." And that's this word that I think is way overlooked, and it's this word called empathy. Empathy is just that. Oh, excuse me, we forgot to unplug the landline there.
It's the empathy.
Empathy. Do
They
what?
call it. It's the empathy police. You use it so much.
uh, to me, empathy is just something that we don't talk a lot about in the business world, especially because it sounds a little fluffy. But it's the capability to feel what someone else is feeling. I mean, it's the art of seeking to actually understand where someone else is coming from, and this requires paying really close attention to like those nuances of the emotional signals combined with caring, compassion, and consideration for others. This is something that if you can even start doing, it'll change everything for you. You will insert yourself into people's lives on a different layer and in a different level than you can even begin to imagine, just by trying to be more empathetic. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says there's five basic steps. The first one, if you want to be more empathetic with people, and that is repeat verbatim the content of the communication, the words, not the feelings. Kind of like what Damien just said with that open-ended question. But it's coming back from that empathetic standpoint of repeating it back. It's almost like saying, so what I heard you say is, and repeat that back. That allows you to make sure that the communication was clear and that you actually physically legitimately understood what they were attempting to say. It allows them the opportunity to clear up anything that wasn't communicated correctly. You can even rephrase it. You can come back in and say, okay, so to summarize what I heard you say, and let me put this in my words to make sure that I completely understand where you're coming from. You can rephrase it. You can reflect it, reflect feelings, look more deeply and begin to capture feelings in your own words. Look beyond words for body language and tone that are going to indicate feelings. You know what? I forget the number, but I think it's 70% of all communication is nonverbal. So if you're paying attention to the nonverbal signals, you're going to learn a lot more about what they're actually trying to say. So pay attention to that. Rephrase contents and reflect feelings. Express both their words and their feelings in your own words. And then discern when empathy is not necessary or appropriate. Sometimes it's not appropriate, and you don't need to go there. And you need to maybe it's like that. I'm talking like that it may be an HR issue where you're like, okay, this is something that is out of my control. It's beyond my level of education, which doesn't take a lot. You just discern when it's not necessary or when it's not needed. Damon, what do you think?
Hey, sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good.
One of the key things that I've had this communication with our VP, and with our director of sales for United here, is the whole body language piece, and us all working from home, where the majority of this country, now going to a remote location, and using and not meeting face to face. I think you lose so much of understanding, because you can't read the body language, you can't understand, you can't see the face, and why it's so important. And I know we're not doing it here. Why it's so important to use your camera while you're on your calls, while you're talking to people, from a business perspective, making sure that you make that connection, and from your personal perspective as well. But when you're using your camera, you can see the look, you can see the body language, you can see the face, you can see the when you say something, how they react. And from a sales perspective, we were reading some studies that said sales go up about 32% because you're actually looking and focusing on the customer, and understanding them, and you're not able to multitask while no one's looking at you. So you're giving your attention to your customer, and reading body language and being empathetic and listening, and it really goes a huge way of in this world that we're living in now, to make sure that you're using your camera so that way you can connect and that you can study body language.
So true. The last class that I did for United was, I actually said from the beginning, well, everybody knows from the beginning you're supposed to have your cameras on when we do a day long or a 2-day or 3-day class. And I told them that exact same thing. I said, I understand that the reason you don't want your camera on is because you don't like the way you look on camera. I said, I get that. I don't like the way I look on camera. I said, but please, if you please try to leave it on so that we can actually see each other. And it's just, yeah, it makes a huge difference. So you're absolutely right. Now, to take this to an even deeper level, empathy is listening to actually try to understand how somebody is feeling. Gentlemen on the call, and this typically is a little more difficult for us than ladies. Ladies ladies on the call, you ladies typically have like this sixth sense on feelings. Like you can just pick up on it and read it like instantly, and you gain that. And I know that's a generalization, but it's reality. So for us, it's how do we listen so that we can actually understand how somebody is feeling. Okay, and here's something else I want you to write down that's a freebie here. And we'll talk about it again at the end. But I want to add it here because it really does add to the empathy factor. And that is this: emotion will override fact every time. Emotion will override fact every time. In other words, you may have all the facts, the figures, the data points, everything necessary to prove your point, make your sell, do your thing, do your job, be you. You may have all that, and you may have it in aces. However, if somebody has an emotion going on, emotion wins every time. So if you can become empathetic, you actually start trying to figure out how somebody is feeling, because you really got to address those feelings first before you can move on to the facts. And if you do that, it's so much more powerful. Feelings are attached to emotions, and emotions are those things that are burned into our memory on the cellular level. What's that quote? People won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. Like, add those 2 words on the end of that. And that's what we're talking about with empathy. And we even have a spectrum for it. I mean, there's really 4 paths that we can work through. It's that first phase, which is the pity. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry you're having to go through that. Like, I have pity for you. The second phase is sympathy, which means I actually feel for you. Empathy is when I feel with you. I'm there with you. The power comes when we can become a compassionate person, because if you can become compassionate, that's when you're moved by someone. It's that neurological level of something, like that you've so connected that you not only mirror their feelings, but you are moved by their feelings. When someone shares a story, the part of our brain that is stimulated is the same part that was affected in the person telling the story. It's like it matches that level, and you actually understand, you get it, and you actually feel for them. Okay, when you can become empathetic and then you can start maybe even become compassionate, that's when we create followings. That's when we create people who will do business with us, do business for us, and no matter no matter what else is going on, that's when we create that movement of people, because they're so attached to us on that emotional level that they're with us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Matt. You know, and I've never, I mean, I've never seen or really consumed this slide, and it really makes you think, right? When you're talking to someone and I'm listening to respond and not listening to understand. You know, someone can say, well, you know, my dog went for surgery yesterday, and oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, right? There's really no effort there. That's like a natural canned response, right? And that's not gonna. That's just it's canned, right? And I know when
Yeah.
people say it to me, it's canned. But when you start asking questions, when you start, you know, understanding why they had surgery and what they need to do, and giving them basically a metaphorical hug, right? And saying, I'm here for you if you need anything, you know, let me know what's going. And then you follow up with a call or a text message after, if you know they went for surgery at 4 o'clock and you call at 7, you know, something of that nature is where you're really building that relationship and that bond, and knowing that, you know, you care to help them. And whether it's personal or work, you know, you can do the canned response, and I do it all the time, right? It's listening to reply and not listening to understand. And that's like, you know, a pity response, but you can see how much more effort and engagement there is when you actually care enough to ask further questions, to follow up, and just do the little things like saying, hey, Matt, you know, how are things today? You know, how's Katie doing after her accident, right? Something else of that nature, that I really think builds that bond and makes you want to come back to that person.
100%. And you only get that by asking those questions, which is why we lead with the questions. Now we're talking about empathy. And I'll give a shout out to you, my friend. Like a year ago, this past August, my wife was hit by a drunk driver. She and I were actually on the phone together when the accident happened. So that throws a whole nother dimension of stress to the situation as well. After that, there were a couple of people that I just went above and beyond to check on me, and more importantly, her. And you were one of those people. You actually felt with me. You understood what I went through. You understood how traumatic it was that I was on the phone with her while this accident happened. And then you followed up on a consistent basis asking, how's Katie this week? How's she doing today? How are you doing? So I'm going to give you some shout outs on this one, because you actually lived this. So kudos to you for not just being able to teach this, but being able to put it into play in your real life, because that's when we really make those connections with people. So I thank you, sir, for doing that.
Well, thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. And then the last piece that we want to dive into in our time together is how you actually say things, because it's great to have a message, but big deal if you don't say it in a way that really connects with people. And if we're talking about being positively assertive, the manner that you say things is pivotal. So we're all born with a tone of voice, but the thing is, we can learn how to improve it. No one ever talks about that in leadership training classes. No one ever talks about that in positive assertiveness classes. But if you want to be positively assertive, you gotta start practicing on how you say things. Because obviously the goal, by and large, is to sound upbeat, warm, under control, and clear. And this is something that, like, I've gone through training for this. I've taken classes. I've studied this, because if I'm going to be a speaker, if I'm going to be a trainer, I know that the way that I say things has just as much power as what I'm saying. So a couple of things. One, and my speech coach told me this. She goes, breathe from your diaphragm. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, much less how to spell it. She goes, you're breathing from your throat. Breathe down low. And we actually spent the first couple of weeks just working on my breathing. Crazy how impactful that has been. Drink plenty of water, stay hydrated, avoid caffeine. Caffeine is a diuretic, it dries your mouth out. So if you are presenting, if you are talking to someone, make sure you have something that is going to hydrate you, not dry your mouth out. My number one recommendation to anyone on this is lemon water and honey. Put the two together, put more honey than lemon, and that keeps your voice lubricated, that keeps your mouth lubricated and soothes it. It's amazing what that does. That's, as in speech training, that's the number one thing that I'll tell people to do. It's the one thing I ask for when we get to a hotel, is if I carry little packets of honey with me. I can always get hot water. So I carry the little packets of honey, and that's what I drink before speech. Posture affects your breathing, and it also the tone of your voice. So be sure to stand upright. People are going to be able to tell, even if we're on these webinars. If I'm slouched over on my computer, leaning on my desk, you're going to be able to tell. The whole time I've been talking, I've been sitting straight up so that it sounds like I'm sitting straight up, because we can tell that, can't we? And then the last one, warm up the tone of your voice with a smile. Without fail, every time people will say, I could tell you were smiling when you were talking. If you want to have powerful, positive assertiveness on other people, hey, well, just practice smiling. Good grief, the world needs a whole lot more of that anyway. So practice smiling. Anything you want to add to that, Damien, before I go to this one?
No, but you can tell that I've been crouched over because you sound a lot better than I do. So I'm going to sit up straight. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that afterwards. I'm just
Appreciate
kidding. Okay, this kind of gets into speech training. So if I'm coaching someone on how to become a better presenter, this is one of the things. These are some things that we're going to go over. If you have a voice that is particularly high or low, you're going to have to exercise it. And that sounds so weird, but your vocal cords are a series of muscles, and you can actually work them out. So if you've got that high or low pitched voice, practice speaking on a sliding scale. Go really, really low, then go up really, really high. And before you get into an event, practice going low to high. You can do some little tongue rolls and make a sound and go low to. I mean, we do these things as speakers and trainers. So practice speaking on the different ends of your tone. Okay, you say, well, my voice isn't high or low. I get that. Okay, well, for the love of humanity, give me some variety. So practice using your high end of your voice, practice using the low end of your voice. I mean, practice that just so you don't sound like Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. So practice using the ranges. Number 2, record your voice and listen to the playback. There is nothing that is more difficult than listening to yourself, because what do we all know? That you are your worst what? You're your worst critic.
Critic, yeah.
So this is one thing that I will, even if we're doing coaching, I will bring a camera and we will record you speaking, and then we're going to watch it back. I'll even watch it back a number of different ways. I'll watch it back in to like time and a half speed, so we hear it faster, and you can see if there's anything that's like a click that's picking up. We'll listen to it without the sound at all, so we can watch your body language. We're gonna listen to it with the video off and just listen to it, and then we'll listen to it normally. So those are 4 ways that we will actually go with someone through speech training, so we can pick up on any kind of nuance that we might need to address. But you, for the sake of positive assertiveness, record yourself. Record a conversation that you're going to have with somebody, and then listen back to it so you can judge how you are coming across.
Hey, Matt,
People,
this is something that I have tons of personal experience with. For around my college years, I developed a social anxiety, and I was not going around people, and I was, afraid to speak, and it was a very weird time for me. And I decided to take a public speaking class in college. So this was around junior year. I said, you know what, I need to fix this, and how can I? Well, I've got a class that I can take, a public speaking, and recording it and going through all of what you just every time I hear myself, and then watching the video and making sure that I'm approaching people properly, and that I'm keeping a personal bubble, and doing all of that material really works. I mean, I'm training now for 15, 20 years, doing trainings and presentations in front of CEOs and large groups of people, and it really does work in understanding how to present and how to speak to people. I used to have people on my teams that had that really peppy voice that makes you want to strangle them. It's 9 o'clock on Monday, no one can be that happy, I don't want to talk to you. And then listening to what I listen to most days, which is me, and sounding like the world is going to end, and finding that happy place in the middle, especially when we're talking to people every day. If your job is speaking to people every day, this is a huge piece of advice that I would say try and see how it works for you.
Yeah, I mean, and this is all about being more positively assertive. So that's why we're talking about this, because, okay, what's the number one fear in the world? Number one fear in the world? Public speaking.
Public
is
speaking.
The number one fear, which means most people would rather die than speak in public. But what do we all do every day? Every day we're speaking on some level in public. And it's changed now over the last 7 months, but we're still doing it, which now, because of the way we have transitioned over this year, leads to this being even more important. I get it, it's going to take some practice, but the payoff for this is so immense. Radio personalities don't become radio personalities because they have a monotonous voice. Actors don't become actors and actresses because they're bland and boring with the way they deliver something. It's they've learned it. It's an art. It's a craft. Okay, you're saying, well, I don't need to do it. Okay, you're here because you want to be more positively assertive. So get over yourself and start practicing on your own voice. It's going to be huge. You may have to get some friends and family to help you out with this. If you just absolutely cannot stand the thought of watching yourself, okay, record yourself, give it to someone else, say, hey, I need you to critique me. What could I do to improve the way that sounded? Simple question. You're going to get 2 or 3 things back from someone that will help you be able to communicate more effectively. The reality is 38% of the messages received by a listener are governed by this thing called tone and quality of your voice. Its pitch, its volume, and control all make a difference in how confident you sound when you are communicating. If I did not govern my pitch, my volume, and the quality of what I said, would I be an effective trainer? I could have the greatest content on the planet. I could have content that would change human lives in a great and positive, powerful way. But if I didn't deliver it in an effective manner, would it be any good? There's no difference for you, and I do mean all of you on this call, on this webinar. This is a big player. Okay, let's take each one of these. Pitch. how low or high your voice is. Try to avoid the the tops that's in the bottoms. Avoid a high pitched sound. Speak from your stomach. Um, we One of the things we coach people on is as you're practicing this, you put your hand on your belly button and see how much your stomach moves with your breath as you breathe in and out. And that can help you start moving where you're speaking from. Control the volume. Um, that's where that's coming from is that diaphragm. Try not to speak through your throat. And then the quality. I call this the color, the warmth, the meaning given to your voice, and how it contributes to adding that emotion to your voice. And like you can tell I'm smiling right now. So smile as much as you can when you're speaking. I even take this and I call it the VIP method: volume, inflection, and pace. I can absolutely, as a communicator, I can control an entire room of people strictly with my volume, my inflection, and my pace. Those things right there. I was speaking with one of the largest groups I've ever spoken in front of was a group of over 8,000 students, high school students in Ohio. 8,000 high school students in an auditorium. Great conference, great convention. Like it was the whole deal. Like lights, cameras. You come out from the middle of the stage. It was epic. I'm up there giving my speech, and I can see that on the front row, there's a group of about 8 girls sitting right over stage right. And they're not paying attention. They're chatting with each other. They were even doing this little hand clapping thing, like they were doing like their own little wave back and forth with each other with this little hand thing. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get them. I'm gonna get them. So at one point, as soon as I could, 8,000 people in an auditorium, I dropped my voice just slightly above a whisper, and I knelt down on my knee, and I paused. And I gave this message into the microphone across this whole thing. And I changed up the volume, the inflection, and the pace to the point that it made it so uncomfortable for them that they knew they were supposed to be listening. And at that point in time, they were right back with me. I just controlled them. But what else did I just control? I just controlled 8,000 people and how they received a message strictly with the volume, the inflection, and the pace. If you want to start tying all of this together, you can do that strictly by sounding confident, by practicing how you say things, and put it, yeah, just get out there and start. Um, the Japanese even have this thing, it's that last thing on this list, Pechakucha, and I think I say that right, but it's the art, it's called 20 by 20. And what they do is they actually have these gatherings where a person has 20 images, 20 slides that can only be an image. They have only 20 seconds to talk about each slide. So it is a rapid pace. They have to get their point across using imagery in short burst of 20 seconds or less. And so in 6 minutes and what's that, 6 minutes 40 seconds, something like that, they actually then deliver a message using imagery and just talking about it in nuggets. And that's a way you can start to practice this, is break it down into those pieces, and you'll be amazed at how then you're able to become a more positively assertive person just by starting to put all of this into practice. Anything else you want to add to that, brother?
No, sir. I think you did a fantastic job.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
The last piece, the last thing that we want to address real quickly is something that you've got to be able to handle if you're going to be a positively assertive person. I mentioned it before, and that is emotion. There are going to be times when we have anxiety, and if the whole intent of this is to be more positively assertive, you got to be able to address anxiety in your team members. So, what creates anxiety for you at work right now? What do you do now to reduce anxiety in your workplace? Does anybody have an example of anything that they are experiencing? I know a lot of us work together, so some people are like, I ain't talking about that right now.
That's a good question, especially, with everyone, not everyone, a good portion of the world working remotely. How do you get rid of your anxiety? For me, lately, it's been going to the refrigerator, which I don't know if that's helping reduce it or causing when my third chamber is in.
Yeah, I get that one. Yeah, for me, it's the art of active listening allows you to fully receive a message from another person. So the active listening allows you to be sensitive to all the dimensions of communication that make up an entire message, especially in challenging situations. If you're dealing with an emotion, active listening is being able to figure out where this is ultimately coming from, and we got to then be able to reduce that anxiety.
And Matt,
Because yeah, go
we have,
ahead.
sorry for interrupting. We have a couple in here that says, I think it's more of a breathing session. I think is what we have a couple of responses from Justin and one other person that says they're paying attention to their breathing and making sure that they're breathing in and out.
Ooh, that's good. And it's true. It's sometimes I call it the millisecond pause. Sometimes you just have to pause for a split second to take in that breath so that then you can go forward. And yeah, because anxiety inhibits your ability to act and sound confident. Um, and so you got to be able to handle it. Because if you're if you're anxious, if you're nervous, if you're stressed out about it, you figure out what you can do to handle the anxiety. Knowing how to perform a quick relaxation exercise, even if it is something like that breathing, it can help diffuse anxiety. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about diffusing it in yourself so that then you can be more confident in your speaking. Okay, what is the number one fear in the world? It's public speaking. So then that's a common denominator. If everyone on planet Earth knows that public speaking is fearful, or being in front of people talking is something that causes anxiety or fear, sometimes you can even address it as simply by saying, I can't tell you how uncomfortable sometimes it makes me to have to be in front of everybody talking, but I'm going to do my best. And okay, everybody gets that because that's the number one fear in the world. So you just made a connection with the majority of people in the room. And that's a huge connection point. So it allows you then to move forward with a conversation. So reduce your anxiety somehow, some way. Find the trick that works for you. Mine is the breathing thing, like Justin and whoever else said it. Mine is going prior to an event. I have a prayer. I'm a faith person. I have a prayer that I say before I go in. And for me, if you want to be positively assertive, one thing I can give you that will help you get over your anxiety of speaking in front of people or even confronting someone else is, why does it make you nervous? Well, typically speaking in front of somebody makes us nervous because we don't like how we sound, how we're going to look, how we're going to come across, how we're what. Who does that come down to? That's all about me. That's all about you as the individual. So instead, change it around. How can I help you? What could I do to help you solve your problem, make that connection, build that relationship? When you change just the way that you approach a conversation to making it about them, not you, you will instantly become more positively assertive.
Hey,
It,
Matt, I know we're wrapping up here, but I just wanted to thank Wayne for telling me to put a positive note in the fridge when I go in there, and it'll help.
Thanks, Wayne. We should all probably do that during the COVID-20 that we've all been subject to. With that being said, brother, you got anything else you want to add before I close it out?
No, sir. No, not at all.
Perfect. Well, thanks for your input as well. For the rest of you that were a part of this, you know, we hit on a couple of different things. We hit on how do you communicate with somebody with confidence? How do you become more empathetic and become a more empathetic listener by asking those questions? And then how do you actually control the tone of what you say in order to build those connections? We hope that this helped in some way you become a better facilitator, a better connector, a better relator to other people. Because if you can do that, we know without a doubt that you will be a more positively assertive person. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to working with you in the future, and we'll see you down the road.